Welcome to Vintage Weights PGH. My name is Rob, and on today's video, I'm going to tell you all about international deep dish weight plates. We'll go over a slight history, a little bit, and we'll get into the dimensions and the different qualities or the lack thereof of this plate, and I'll give an overall review. At the end of the video, I'll dive into a personal opinion when it comes to the valuation of these. And of course, please, if you're enjoying these review videos and guide videos of vintage weights, remember to subscribe. Smash that subscribe button right now before you forget to. That way you won't miss any of the ones coming up. Now, to start out, where did these come from? They came from Canada. What's the history of them? Well, they are international and they were made in Canada, and that's about it. I know if you were watching this video solely to learn the mysterious history, you might not hit the like button at this point, but bear with me. I've tried. I have posted and asked, hey, does anyone know anything about these? And I've only gotten the same response, that they're international, and since it says Canada, they were made in Canada. Here's what I have to say about that. There were many plates that said international on them. Weider, also from Canada, said international on them over the years. It's not a strange thing to have the word international on your plate. I also cautioned viewers in my avoid these deep dish weight plates against buying the newer international deep dish plates that were made in China. How can you tell the difference? Well, the font is different, and I point out several different things in that video. I'll link it at the end of this one. The main thing you want to look for is that instead of having a sticker on it that says made in China, it has a stamp on it near the hub that says Canada. As far as figuring out anything else about these, I don't think they were made by Weider, because Weider published Muscle and Fitness, and they advertised just about everything they sold in their magazine, and I couldn't find any advertisements for international plates in there. I don't think they were made by the same company that made Thor plates, which were made in Canada, because the Canada stamp is different, and all the lettering and fonts and dimensions, everything else is different. Not that a foundry can't make different things, but it just seems strange to me. As far as how old they are, they do have kilogram on them as well as pound, so I think it's a safe bet. Late 70s through 80s and into the 90s, these were made. As far as the casting, we've got a 3-spoke classic deep dish design with the spokes coming to a complete finish about an inch from the rim. The rim is almost a 90-degree angle, not much slope. The hub is a 90-degree angle. I've seen many people hub lift international plates because of the straightness of the hub, the lack of a slope to it, making it, I think, a little easier to hub lift. As far as the lettering and the numbering, it's not exactly skinny because it doesn't come to a point at the top. It is flat at the top, but it is a narrower font as compared to some others. The numbers as well, matching font. The thing that I find interesting about the lettering, and that I personally kind of like, is that it's not perfectly centered, the word international, on this spoke. They put the prefix on this side and then the word national on this side. If you were to count up the letters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have over here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they should really shift it over a couple of letters if they wanted to divide it in half. But like I said, I sort of like it. It gives it a little character that there's only this much room left on this side, but over here we've got this big blank space and then the prefix international. In terms of design, nothing really stands out too much more with the design other than that straight hub and international not being equally split, at least on the front of the plate. If you look on the back of international plates that were made in Canada, you might just find these rings. In the vintage weights collector's world, people commonly call these bullseye rings because they look kind of like a bullseye, and I've only seen 3. I haven't seen concrete evidence as to why these were cast in the back, whether it was just an aesthetic design choice or whether some people posited it was for weight tolerance purposes. And we'll get to the weight tolerance of these plates in a moment. However, when I examine them, a couple things stick out to me. I've seen several pairs of these, and I've never seen less than 3 rings. If it were for weight tolerance purposes, you think they'd have a variance in terms of depth or in terms of the number of rings. So it's a little strange if it were for weight tolerance to have the same depth and the same number of rings. Therefore, I lean on the side of this just being an aesthetic choice, and that's what I think makes these unique plates. There aren't many other plates that have something on the back of them as a design if they aren't double-sided. So something different on the back. You might be thinking in your head of lathing or milling or machining, but I mean, that's really not aesthetically a choice by the original makers of those plates. Lathing and milling, that was for tolerance. So I find that to be a unique thing when it comes to the International deep dish. As far as machining or things for accuracy, on the edges, and you'll see this a little better whenever I go up to the bar and we look at the diameter and the thickness, they are machined on the edges, and you can see that that was most likely because of casting overflow or casting flaws. When it comes to the cleanness and the quality of the casting, I am impressed. These are generally on the lower end of a collectible scale, and I'll talk more about that with the valuation at the end of the video. But for being at the lower end of a collectible scale, I see very few casting flaws on them. I mean, around the edge here of the hub, there's a couple little flaws, but nothing humongous. And when I run my hands over the edge, they were all ground off. On the back, where you might typically see on vintage weights some pitting or some little, craters, if you will, there's a couple, but I mean, I'm talking like BB size or less. So that is a high note when it comes to these plates, that for being on the lower end of things in terms of collectability, they're a fairly clean cast. Now, to be fair, this particular plate is very clean with original black paint. I got this here in Pittsburgh, but to pair it up, I reached out to fellow collectors and asked, hey, does anyone have one? And the one that you're about to see on the bar isn't as clean in terms of the condition. The casting is just as clean, but the condition of the one on the bar, it's missing some original paint, and you'll notice that difference. Let's go to the weight tolerance at this point and check out what these are on the scale. 45.3, 45.35. A little bit over, but they match, and I really like that they match. Here's our Bullseye, made in Canada, International deep dish, and it's on a Rogue Ohio power bar with a milled York 45. A milled York 45 is pretty much the standard when it comes to the width and diameter of weight plates, so this is a good way to show you what you're working with. So in terms of deep dish, we come in at just about 1.7 inches. To give a comparison, my Yorks over there are 2 inches. The thinnest I have are right above them, the Shizzlers, at like 1.6. Ivanko's just above that at like 1.7. So the International coming in at just about 1.7 puts them on the thinner edge of deep dish. They are slightly larger than a typical plate that you might have. That might annoy some people. It's not really that unusual for vintage weights to be different diameters, and this actually isn't too bad. I've seen far worse. I mean, this is less than a 1/4 inch. I think it's even less than 1/8 of an inch. This is only about a 1/16 of an inch difference. So that might annoy you, maybe not. I'm here to tell you, as someone with several pairs of deep dish, that that's not too bad. As far as play on the bar, if you look in the center of the bullseye, not much. It's actually about the same difference in terms of the diameter, which makes sense. So the diameter being a little bit larger, this is about 1/8 of an inch. Now, before I go back to the bench, let me show you some close-ups of what I was talking about, that there's a little bit of casting flaws here, but overall it's a clean cast. And then the machining on the edge that you might find depending on the particular plates that you find, I kind of like. And that's not all that uncommon. Not that much play on the bar. And when it comes to that, keep in mind that these plates predate the Rogue Ohio Power Bar by a couple decades, and that older bars actually did have a slightly larger diameter sleeve. Like my York split sleeves, if I were to put these on, it'd probably be a little more snug. The bar that came with this set doesn't have any markings except for an eye on the very end. It is a roll pin style bar, similar to a York split sleeve or a Texas power bar. However, I wouldn't say that most people consider it the best quality. Just if you wanted a full set of these, something to keep in mind. Look for that bar that came with them with an eye stamped on the very end of the shaft of the bar. When it comes to the rest of the plates in the set, the 35s and 25s are identical to the 45 in design. And then, as is common with some lesser quality sets and even some higher quality sets, the change plates do not have any lettering. They just have numbering on them. I don't have any of those. I don't have a full set. I just have these 45s. So keep that in mind when it comes to weight tolerance as well, that it's not really a huge sample study in this video. It's just my particular pair. But I am pretty impressed with the weight tolerance of the pair that I have at 45.3. Not too shabby. What else am I impressed by, and what do I wish was a little better with these? I'm impressed by the overall quality of the casting, that there aren't that many flaws, and that it is fairly accurate, at least the pair that I have. I like that there's not too much play on the bar, and I like that the diameter is almost where it needs to be, that it's not going to stand out with my other 45s. The thing that I like the most about them would be the bullseye on the back, because I know it looks simplistic, it's just 3 rings, but I do find it to be unique. I mean, drop a comment and let me know. Are there other vintage plates that you know of that aren't double-sided and have something different cast into the back of them? I can't think of any. Other than, like I said, having lathing or milling, machining of some type for tolerance purposes. So I really like them from that angle. What I don't like would be the very hard corners, the sharp corners, if you will. It makes it so that these aren't as comfortable in the hand. On the front, the corners, and I don't know, to be honest, whether it's from usage or whether it's cast. I'd take a guess that it's the casting, but the corners on the front edge are slightly rounded, but then the corners on the back edge are very sharp. If they had taken the time to, I mean, they were machining anyway, but if they'd taken the time to address that, I think it would be a little bit more comfortable in the hand. I wish they were a little more deep, because they are, as I said, on the lower end of deep dish in terms of the thickness. So that's something that, you know, is a knock against them. And then the biggest thing is just not having too rich of a history. Yes, it's not made in USA, but it's made in Canada, our friends to the north. So I like that it's made in Canada. That's kind of cool. I like that it's stamped with Canada, but I wish there was a little more history behind these international Canada plates. So please, maybe you can help out with that. If you know anything about them, drop a comment and let me know. Are you from Canada? Have you seen these when you were growing up? Even if you're from the United States or elsewhere, did you buy these from a certain location, a certain store or catalog or magazine? Where did these come from and who made them? That's always a good thing to know. When it comes to value, what I typically see, even beyond my local market, what I see on a national level is about $1.50-ish a pound, which isn't that different than most weights that are sold on the used market. If anything, I sometimes, unfortunately see these valued a little too high in my opinion, and people selling them for even $2.50 a pound. And oh my gosh, on eBay, anything's crazy. I mean, someone will put up a generic plate on eBay and tell you that it's vintage and ask you for $5,000. So I'm not even talking about eBay here. I'm talking about on places like Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, and Craigslist that sometimes I see people, since it's deep dish, price them a little too high. 45s are always a little more desirable. So for example, if I were to sell these, I'd probably price them like $1.80 a pound for the 45s. That, and I took the time to clean up this set. Now, when it comes to that valuation though, that's just my opinion because of course, value is an opinion when it comes to collectibles and there's no authority on it. But take it or leave it, and if you disagree with it, drop in the comments what you think they're worth. For now, I just want to thank you for watching this far, and I want to mention that if you're curious about these calipers, I'll drop a link. I had cheap ones that really stunk, and I love these. Maybe I'll do a write-up on them, but I'll drop a link. They're affordable. They're about 15 to 20 bucks. Check them out. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and all that happy stuff. And of course, old weights, new gains.